With a sudden explosion, the woman's eyes flew open, her heart pounding with fear. She tried to move, but her body was restrained by an invisible force, her throat constricted by a tight strap. She was trapped in a pitch-black chamber, illuminated only by the eerie glow of mysterious machines and monitors. Desperately struggling to recall how she ended up here, she gasped for air as she thrashed against her restraints, her fear growing with each passing moment. Another blast rocked the room, causing her restraints to rattle, and then everything went silent. The machine stopped humming, and the woman was left alone in the darkness, surrounded only by the strange, otherworldly voices echoing around her. She heard footsteps approaching, growing louder and more ominous with each passing moment, and fear seized her as she realized she was completely helpless. Then, the door shook with a deafening bang, and blinding light flooded the room. The woman caught a glimpse of several figures in uniforms and helmets before she was lifted onto a stretcher, her body weak from the ordeal. As she was carried away, she caught a flash of memory, the face of an Asian man, but before she could process it, she lost consciousness, her fate unknown. She came back to herself slowly, with the bright light shining into her eyes, forcing them shut. "Wake up," someone barked at her, their voice muffled and distant. She opened one eye groggily. It took her a few moments to focus on what she saw. Two people dressed in blue suits were staring down at her, one of them with a clipboard and pen. She noticed American flag patches on the shoulders of their suits, curiously turned upside down. Their faces were hidden behind masks made out of black plastic. Only their eyes were visible through a clear plastic visor. She guessed that both were of Asian descent and probably male. One of the men grabbed her arm, lifting her head off the pillow. Then he placed what looked like a medical device on her forehead and snapped his fingers in front of her eyes. The woman couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. "Who are you?" the woman asked, her voice hoarse and weak. The person with the clipboard ignored her question and pushed a button on the blue suit. The person started talking, seemingly through a radio, probably to a superior. The person had a heavy accent, and through the mask, she understood only one sentence: "The implant is still active." Focusing on her head, the woman did feel a strange sensation. Something was there, in her brain, that shouldn't be. She tried to sit up, but the person holding her down refused to let go. "Stay still," one of them commanded. The woman complied, too disoriented to put up much of a fight. She looked around the room, taking in her surroundings. It was small, barely big enough for a bed, a lamp, and a few pieces of medical equipment. Two doors led out of the room, one marked as the bathroom, the other one a fortified metal door. There were no windows, no way to tell if it was day or night outside. There were no pictures on the walls, no decorations. Only a camera in the corner of the ceiling reminded her of the seriousness of the situation. While enduring the examination, the woman wondered how long she had been there. From outside, she heard waves. With her senses slowly returning to her, she also noticed the slight swaying of the room. She realized that she must be on a boat or ship. Suddenly, she heard the sound of an engine revving up, and the room started to move. This was also the moment when they finished their examination and the woman was allowed to sit up. The two people in blue suits stared at her, their expressions inscrutable behind their masks. "We rescued you from Cybernetics Inc. You are safe now," the second man said, finally. This time, the voice came through a loudspeaker in the person's mask. He spoke American English with no accent, which put her heart somewhat at ease. The woman had never heard of Cybernetics Inc. She furrowed her brow, trying to piece together what was happening. She did not know how long she slept, but she felt strong enough to take a few steps. She was still uneasy on her feet. She noticed how thin her legs and arms were. She could not remember her past, but she felt different. She brushed over her arms and then bent forward to brush over her legs to regain a feeling of her current self. She noticed a name tag with 3 Korean letters on her blue one-piece patient gown. My name," she whispered. She did not recognize the letters, and only now she realized she could not even remember her name. She sat down on the bed and lowered her head. Suddenly, she felt as if she was the loneliest person in the world, and she started sobbing. She cried for a while, but she didn't want to waste her strength on crying. She had to keep herself strong. She got up and stood up, feeling slightly dizzy. Her legs and arms felt weak and her body ached, and she knew what she needed to do first. "I can't be the victim in this story. All I have is myself. I am in this room right now. What can I do?" She gathered her senses, closed her eyes, and focused her mind. With lightning speed, she analyzed her situation and prioritized her next steps. She opened the door to the bathroom. It was very small with a tiny window but fully equipped, including a shower and even a fresh set of clothes in her size had been placed on a chair. She took deep breaths of fresh salty air, then stepped into the cabin. To her surprise, it even provided hot water. As she enjoyed the hot water dripping down her skin, for a few minutes, she was able to forget her worries. The mirror caught her attention. She turned her head, left and right, examining her face. She felt strange. Her face was different from what she remembered. Her skin was paler, her features sharper, her hair was shorter, her eyes darker. She had a feeling as if you met someone who looks exactly like a friend, but you are thinking that this person must be an imposter because you feel no emotional connection to him. She tried to get a glimpse of whatever she felt was implanted into her skull, but she could not see anything. She tried to focus on what she knew, but she still felt a strange disconnect between herself and the person in the mirror. She continued to shower, enjoying the hot water as it washed away the grime and sweat of the journey. The woman dried off, then dressed in clean clothes. She was surprised at how comfortable they were. She felt refreshed and renewed as if she had just woken up. She walked back into the room and sat down on the bed. She'd opened the first 2 drawers of the medical cabinet but found nothing but some medical supplies and some bandages, nothing that could help her figure out more about the situation. The last drawer contained a Bible. Odd, she said, opening the page with a bookmark. The passage, Genesis 1:31, and God saw everything that he had made, and, behold, it was very good, was marked with a yellow marker. She wondered if this was connected with what they have previously told her, that her captors were monsters. Maybe the Bible is right, she whispered while her hand again caressed the back of her skull where she could feel the implant. While flipping through the pages, another thought came to her mind. Or, I am in the hands of religious fanatics. This thought made her hair stand on end. I don't know what to believe anymore, she said, closing the Bible. Days turned into weeks as they traveled across the Pacific Ocean. The woman spent all of her time locked in her small room, occasionally being visited by the men who would grill her about her past and possible affiliations with Cybernetics Inc. But try as she might, she could not dredge up any memories. Likewise, they did not reveal much about themselves, so she was left in the dark about their motives and what they might do with what she is telling them. They provided her with food, water, and medical attention, but beyond that, she was left to her own devices. The only other thing she was able to learn was what the name tag meant. In English, it meant Kim Ji-young. They quickly dispelled her hopes, though, as this name means the same as Jane Doe in English. It seems that even to her previous captors, she was an unknown person. Left alone, the silence and solitude were maddening, and she spent most of her time lost in thought. The only break from her isolation came when she exercised. She was amazed at how easily her muscles regained their strength, almost as if her body had a memory of its own. Whatever awaited her in Los Angeles, she wanted to be ready. When resting, she picked up the Bible and started reading. She felt no emotional need to do so, nor did she recognize any of the passages, so she assumed that in her past life, she was probably not very religious. But it was the only book available to her, and she hoped it would help her mind stay sharp. As she read, she realized that she had a gift for understanding complex concepts. It was a talent she must have honed over years of working with ideas and theories. Maybe I was a scientist or a researcher, she thought. But then, another idea struck her. Maybe it is the implant. She mused. She had no way of knowing for sure. All she could do was wait and hope that the answers would come to her once she reached her destination. Either way, she took a mental note that she will visit a library once she is in Los Angeles. Somehow, she knew that whatever is wrong with her memory, she can still access it indirectly. She can walk, have a conversation, think about general concepts, and instinctively know what different items are. She was just unable to recall specific situations relating to her. Discovering what comes easy to her might be the key to reconstructing who she was before all this. The woman spent hours staring out of the tiny window in her bathroom, desperate for any sign of the outside world. All she could see were the stars twinkling in the night sky. It was a beautiful sight, but it gave her little to go on. Come on, there has to be something, she muttered to herself, hoping to catch a glimpse of anything that might offer a clue about her situation. She knew that the stars could provide a wealth of information, but she was unable to access any memory of how to interpret them if she even knew how to do that in her past life. Then, one night, she noticed something strange. The sky seemed to have a reddish hue as if it was on fire. She brought it up with her interviewer the next day. Is everything okay out there? The sky looked really red last night. Oh, that. he replied nonchalantly. There are still major forest fires on the west coast. You should keep the window closed to avoid inhaling the smoke. Back in her room, she immediately closed the window and began pacing back and forth. The news alarmed her. On the one hand, this stopped her nightly stargazing. On the other hand, she found it strange for smoke clouds to travel that far out in the ocean. With the danger from inhaled smoke on top, she again felt trapped and completely dependent. But she refused to give up hope. She knew that she had to keep her wits about her if she was to make it out of this ordeal alive. So she resolved to keep a sharp eye out for any more clues and to use whatever knowledge she had to her advantage. After all, she might not remember her past, but she knew she was still a fighter at heart. The woman was jolted out of her reverie by a sudden commotion outside. She heard the sound of boots thundering up the stairs and men shouting orders to one another. Then, there was a loud explosion, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Panic set in as she realized that the ship was under attack. She leaped to her feet and ran to the door, desperate to escape, but as she turned the handle, she realized that it was locked from the outside. "No, no, no!" she cried out in terror, pounding on the door with all her might. Please, let me out." Her screams echoed down the empty hallway, but there was no answer. She was alone, trapped, and vulnerable. Minutes turned into an hour as she huddled in the corner, praying that the attackers wouldn't find her. She could still hear the sounds of battle outside, but she had no way of knowing who was winning or what was happening. Finally, she heard footsteps approaching. She held her breath, not knowing what to expect. The door creaked open, and she saw the two masked men standing in the doorway, very exhausted judging from their body postures. "We're okay," one of them said, helping her to her feet. "The raiders are gone, but we need to keep moving. They'll be back." What was that all about? She asked, still shaking with fear. The two men exchanged a worried glance before explaining that they had been attacked by a group of raiders who had been following them since they left Korea. The raiders were likely working for Cybernetics Inc., trying to prevent them from learning more about their operations. "We knew this was a risk," the man said. "But we can't let them stop us. We have to keep moving forward, no matter what." The woman nodded, her mind racing with questions and fears, but she knew that she had no choice but to keep going. If she wanted to survive and regain her memory, she had to see this through to the end. As the days passed, the woman's fear turned into curiosity. She wanted to know more about Cybernetics Inc. and the implant in her brain. She knew that working with the mercenaries was her only chance to uncover the truth, so she began to open up and answer their questions more honestly. "I don't remember much, but I do remember being in a laboratory," she said to one of her interrogators. "They were doing some kind of experiment on me. I don't know what it was for or how I ended up there. I remember a face, and I'm sure I can recognize the person when I'm seeing him." The man looked at her skeptically. "And you don't remember anything else?" "No, I swear," she replied, hoping her sincerity would convince him. "But I do want to know more. I want to know why I have this implant and what it does, and I want to get out of here." The man considered her for a moment before finally nodding. "All right, we'll help you, but you have to keep cooperating with us, and you have to be patient. We can't just let you go until we know it's safe." The woman nodded, relieved that she might have a chance to escape. She knew that it wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to find out the truth and reclaim her life. But for now, all she could do was wait and see what the future held. As the ship drew closer to Los Angeles, the woman's anxiety began to rise once again. She knew that the world she was about to enter was vastly different from the one she had left behind, and she was afraid of what she might find. But she also knew that she had to keep moving forward, no matter what lay ahead.